I'm glad to be here today. Um, and I say that in all sincerity. I'm glad to be here today on the planet and grateful for all kinds of doctors and support and this opportunity to talk about uh, something that I hold dearly, and that is survival and the lessons that come from it. What I'd like to do is tell you what has happened in a result of survival, and then talk about it, how to survive, maybe some methods or things like that that we can collaborate with and share together. But one product of survival was Lubbock's Race for the Cure. And I wanted to sort of tell this story because I don't want the story to get lost. It was a wonderful collaboration, a spirit of collaborative effort that came together, and as a result of something bad. If there's anything you get out of this, I do believe this with all my heart, that good things do come from bad things. And it's sometimes hard to recognize. But this is Lubbock's Race for the Cure and the story of it. The beginnings of Lubbock's Race for the Cure happened as a result of sheer will and a focused spirit of collaboration among a tenacious group of people, especially women. Having returned from participating in the 1992 Dallas Race for the Cure, my sisters and I were determined to get into the fight against the disease that took our oldest sister, Carolyn, away from us at age 35. I was especially determined that Lubbock should have a race of its own, especially given the medical community here. After talking with a few people, about 20 women showed up in the conference room of First National Bank Lubbock. In that group were representatives from every large bank, every hospital, Texas Tech, and an array of seasoned volunteers ready to get behind a cause that was scaring women to death. Many things came together, including history, to make this small beginning a powerful reality. It was as if women were knocking on a glass ceiling of a disease that was killing our finest, and we were not going to take it anymore. At the meeting, I told my story about my sister, her marvelous talents, and her plea that women needed to take charge of their health. By meeting's end, everyone was on board to make a race for the cure happen in Lubbock. Komen National advised us to form an affiliate first and then have the race next. That is exactly what we did. Linda Nichols and I traveled to Dallas to be trained on getting the Lubbock affiliate organized. We returned and set up an office, got a board of directors together, and our affiliate was born. The first race was set to occur on Saturday, October 7th, 1995. Little did I know that that race would be my first, not as a warrior against this disease, but as a survivor. Concurrent with Lubbock Affiliates organization was a time of unprecedented nationwide bank buyouts. Ford Bank Group having been sold to Norwest, my husband David accepted a banking job in Durango, Colorado. Off we went with one-year-old Jonathan to the mountains. I remained involved with the Lubbock race, but only from a distance. Much of the initial organizational work is thanks to Linda Nichols' unflagging energies and the work of faithful friends. In the summer of 1995, my friend Janie Field called me from Lubbock and asked if I would come back to speak on race day to a group of survivors. I said sure, and couldn't wait to return, see the progress, and brag on all the hard work everyone had done. In September, though, a month before the Lubbock race, I was surprised to find out that I had breast cancer too. My mother was right when she said lightning has struck twice. A yearly mammogram revealed tiny microcalcifications, which upon biopsy were found to be malignant. I was 33 at the time, had just gotten an English teaching job at Durango High School, and our son Jonathan had just turned 2. Since we were headed to Lubbock anyway for the race, David and I went on a 2-week research gathering spree and finally decided, due to my family history, to have bilateral mastectomies followed by delayed reconstruction. Needless to say, that Saturday morning of Lubbock's Race for the Cure had special significance for me. It was a week before my surgery, and there I was, newly diagnosed and preparing to speak to an encouraging group of pink-visored survivors. Jonathan was perched in a backpack on David's back, and Governor George Bush had shown up to run in the race. Although I was a bit nervous that frosty morning, nothing took away more of my apprehension than looking out upon 1,500 runners racing for a cure. A dream had come true. That morning, the then-named South Plains chapter of the Susan G. Komen Foundation raised about $70,000 for breast cancer treatment, research, awareness, and education. I knew, too, that I was racing in my sister's memory, but I also knew I was racing for myself. It seemed to me then that life had turned a circle on itself. Who knew that a hunch born of pain would come back and be transformed into the very help I would need? That day, I remembered, too, Carolyn's positive attitude and courage throughout her entire ordeal. Her mantra for life seemed to be to make something good out of the bad things that happened. When my physician father counseled her during one of her hardest days, he said to her, "Either way, you can't lose." His courageous faith in her and in God's overreaching promises gave Carolyn the resolve she needed to continue. When her treatment was no longer working, she chose to let doctors experiment with her in order for progress to be made for others. Carolyn died in 1991. 4 years later, when I looked out over that crowd of survivors, I felt affirmed that the South Plains Race for the Cure had indeed honored her memory, galvanized a group of West Texas women against a formidable foe, and become a source of unexpected help for me. My hope now is that thanks to the work of faithful researchers and courageous patients, this disease will one day be only as scary as a scrape on the knee. What I want to say about survivors, and jump in anytime too, because you have your own lessons and truths that you know. A good way to survive is to let your mess be your message. That's been said before. But the things that happen to us or come to us can be transformed with time and with support to be used for goodness for others. So good things can come from bad things. And 26 years later, is that right? Or 23, I think, after the first Race for the Cure, and close to $500,000 raised. It's amazing. Who would have thought that that would ever happen in our wildest dreams? So I'm very thankful for that, even though there were some rough moments. The larger goodness is what I think we remember. Secondly, in terms of survival, it's important to control what you can control. There are things you can't control. You really can't control your own genes. That just happened. Uh, but I learned that I could control my attitude. I could control the people that I surrounded myself with, and I needed positive people. I needed to control how much I did on my own and to let others help me and not try to do it on myself. Uh, and I can control the way I talk about it to others. Um, I can even control the doctors I choose to help me. That's when we went on our exploration trip and educational, try to see what to do. I learned that yes, I do have a say. I do need to feel good about the person or persons that I'm giving my body to help. So I can control that. I could not control at that time the insurance mountains that we had to climb. For instance, in 95, I was told that the anesthesia, they would only pay for half of my anesthesia for one side. And I said, well, I have one brain and two breasts. So how is that how is the anesthesia going to be cut in half? Now, unfortunately, that's what they pay for. So another thing about survival that always helps me, I'm a big reader of biography, and to read other stories of survival of any kind, not just cancer, but just people who have been through hard things. It sort of gives you a good perspective. It makes you thankful for the progress that you've made. And I always found that helpful. Um, and also, I do understand that the things that happen to us, nothing is wasted, even when it's bad. Nothing is wasted because there will be a time when you'll have an opportunity to use that experience for somebody else. I have found that to be true since my husband died in 2012. That first bout of surviving with breast cancer certainly informed how to survive without him and as a single mother. Um, so I'm a believer in that, nothing to be wasted, and also have found that whatever we face, God may not be walking before, but God is certainly walking beside through everything. And there's nothing that we face that God and we cannot face together. So thank you. How are your, tell me about your, how did you survive? How do you survive?
The last 3 years, I've spent some time looking back at my life and contemplating what God's plan was for me.
Mm-hmm.
And what I discovered was that God had prepared me for surviving breast cancer. I didn't know it at the time, but when I look back, I had learned to survive being a foster child at the age of 2.
Wow.
Not knowing if my mom was ever going to come back home.
Mm-hmm.
I learned how to survive. And as an adult, I faced other things. You know, at 26, I had a hysterectomy.
Mm-hmm.
And that was also due to those cells that cause problems. And so grieving grieving the thought that I could not have any more children,
Sure.
learning to survive that. When my birth mother came back into my life and she needed somebody to take care of her because she was diagnosed with cancer, I had to survive that. I didn't know what God's plan was for me, but based on my raising and my teachings, the Bible tells me to honor my father and my mother. And so through that, I honored her and I took care of her. And when I look back on those days, I think about how God was preparing me for what I was going to face. I had no idea.
Right.
And so the year that I was diagnosed, my mother had just completed her last chemo treatment the day before. And I went in for my mammogram, and that's a crazy day.
Yeah.
Because they try to do everything in that day. You go in, you get your mammogram, a radiologist reviews it, they send it over to Dr. Ronahan, and they come back and they're kind of talking quietly in a corner, and they ask you to come back in for more views, and you're not sure what to expect, but you know something's wrong.
Yeah.
And so I always think about that, the events that led up to the day that I found out that I had a form of breast cancer. And so I didn't become a survivor overnight.
No.
It was everything that led up to that moment that now when I look back on it, God had prepared me my whole life to be a survivor.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
Being equipped. I think we're equipped if we are truly trying to live as Christ lives, we will be equipped to handle what happens to us and to help others in that way. So it's a crazy ride. Yeah, you can probably edit this. When they told me, they're going to come and call me